Welcome back to another episode of the OC development journey. I know it's been like just over a month since my last one, but I did have this video originally coming out in late July, but I've had to move my schedule around just to accommodate for other videos. Anyway, if you haven't seen the last one, that's totally okay. I can explain to you what this little series is about. Essentially, I have a lot of OCs, and I've had them for a good while. And recently, I released the first chapter of my webcomic Keys of Corruption, which happened to have all of those characters in it. So I figured why not make videos breaking down their development over many years. This video is about my secondary main character, Halay Winters, and her development over 7-ish years. Keys of Corruption is about a world where only 1% of the population is born with special powers called keys. Distressing things start to happen to Rose Kingsley when her mentor dies. This sets into motion a dangerous chain of events that will change Rose's life forever. Essentially, a bunch of young adults become politically aware and try and topple a fascist government. So if that sounds like your thing, the link tree that houses all the different sites that you can read it on will be in the description below. Now that the intro's done, let's go on to Halay Winters, the Era's Tour, aka 2 different prototypes and a final version of her. To start with, we're going all the way back to when I was 13, and I wrote a YN fairy tale fanfiction. I try not to let myself get too embarrassed by writing fanfiction, but this one I really don't like talking about because I was a child. Now, 13-year-old me was cringe as most teenagers are, but sometimes she had good story ideas. This one was not one of them, though. To start off with, this YN was a Mary Sue. Like, textbook definition Mary Sue. The story was set after the main character spent 7 years on Tenor Island, so the YN was left behind and was about 17 when they got back. Grey was her love interest, and the older I get, the more weird I find the premise of falling in love with someone who yesterday was a 10-year-old. But that's like a whole other thing. Speaking of Grey Fallbuster, they ended up kissing within about 6 chapters, and I wasn't writing a lot of words per chapter, maybe about 100 to 200 words. And the dialogue was straight up trash. Like, horrible. It didn't sound realistic at all. I can remember the scene in my head very clearly. The YN was very closed off and Grey was like, "What's wrong with you?" And she admitted that she felt responsible for her best friend's death that happened during the 7 years they were away. The guilt was eating her up to the point she actively told people she killed them. So, you know, her mental health was not great. Grey gave her some good advice since he probably knows how to deal with grief healthily-ish, and then they made out in the streets. I was a child. That's a terrible way to comfort someone, and why is she just okay after that? Like, I can never explain what was going on in my head because the fic doesn't exist anymore. But why? Why did that happen? Why did I do that? The YN was a wizard saint, which is actually kind of a cool concept, and I'll give myself that. She had Dragon Slayer Requip magic, which was essentially the same thing Urza had, but she had like Dragon Slayer specific armor, which was a cool concept, but the name sucked. I distinctly remember someone commenting, "Hey Urza, let me eat your armor," and I deleted the entire fic because of it. I was a sensitive 13-year-old, and sometimes I regret that I deleted it because I would have loved to go back and read it and be like, what the fuck is this? But I'm also glad that I did, because no one else can go back and read it and be like, what the fuck is this? So honestly, a win-win. But that leads on to my next Halay prototype, which was also my first fairy tale OC I ever made. This is the first actual iteration of Halay. Name, colour scheme, personality, this influenced it all. Like the previous prototype, Halay was a fairy tale OC, but this version of her originally started out in Blue Pegasus during the Arashian Sace arc. Halay was very much a punching bag character for me when I was growing up. I figured out a lot of stuff about myself through her. For example, I used to be like, damn, I just get so angry sometimes I want to punch a wall. And I made Halay have anger issues and depression because I'd never seen that in a fairy tale OC before. Turns out I had depression, and the anger was just me suppressing my emotions and needing a release. I also found out I was bisexual and gender fluid through her, so she really has stuck with me for a while. I have a real emotional connection to this OC. Halay had a natural charisma to her, as well as being very awkward. She's the kind of person to flirt with everyone, but if the person she likes flirts back, then she blushes like a high schooler. Though she does actively shut down a lot of romances that come her way, Halay is 100% a yearner. She learned to deal with lots of kinds of people during her time at Blue Pegasus, and that really helped her interacting with lots of people because of it. Though she does end up transferring to Fairy Tail because they fall more in line with her chaotic nature. Over the course of the fic, Halay gets more progressively mentally ill, which low-key fell in line with me discovering that I was not okay. She doesn't present herself as an active suicide risk until she's in a fight and then will literally put her life on the line. You can always tell when a character is fighting selflessly and when they're fighting to die, and Halay was always the latter no matter what the fight was. Halay doesn't go to Tenor Island and she stays behind, and then eventually becomes a wizard saint. I told you it was a good idea, so her coping mechanisms get worse, but they're more easily identifiable if you know her. Halay ends up being 24 after the 7-year skip, and I like her being a lot older than any of the usual main characters, because she brings an air of maturity and wisdom to the world she's in. I love her being that leader/mentor figure to younger people, especially when it comes to fighting and coping with mental struggles. If you watched the last OC development journey with Rose, you'll know that I spoke a lot about how Rose would butt heads with another character, and Halay is that character. The fanfiction was written from her POV, and it honestly made Halay seem super forgiving even if she wasn't. Like, Halay would forgive you, but she'd break your legs first. The best decision I made for this fanfiction was having Halay forcibly settle down. Halay was the kind of character who wouldn't stop fighting unless she physically couldn't anymore, a bit like Levi from Attack on Titan, but she does forcibly retire and gets to live a nice life with her adopted son and a whole host of brotherly figures who would actually kill a god for her. Now, Keys of Corruption Halay, much like the previous prototype, is very mentally ill, but this time she doesn't have the support system, so she suffers in silence a lot more. Eventually people start to notice, but this is when she starts to open herself up to them. A major difference between this version and any other version of Halay is that Halay is no longer the main character. She adopts the reluctant mentor archetype at the beginning, before she actually just becomes a motherly figure to the main cast of characters. I think this falls more in line with her character, and where I want to go with that character too, since she had been through a lot at a young age and kind of lost out on her childhood, so is trying to make sure that other traumatized kids get to at least have a few years of not having to worry about that kind of thing, and heal-ish. Halay is quite sassy and charismatic. She's more aware of herself in this version, often flirting with people to test the waters and see what will happen, though she does get a lot more aggressive after she's resurrected. Oh, I should probably mention this, but Halay dies. It's in the first chapter, so it's not really a spoiler. Go read the first chapter! But she does get brought back to life, which is where the scar on her neck comes from. So, another traumatizing event for her. Anyway, back to Halay being aggressive. Essentially, she gets 13 years of amnesia, and she kind of starts getting pissed when people tell her who she's supposed to be, but at some point along the story, her aggression starts to cool off when she realizes the role she needs to play for her quote-unquote kids. It will probably take maybe 5 to 6 arcs for her to fully realize this and apply it, so we do actually get a nicer version of Halay for most of the story. Halay is very much a natural mother. She scolds but doesn't get angry, she advises but lets them make their own mistakes, and she'll help pick up the pieces and then simply educate them afterwards, because if they already know they've done something wrong, she's not about to beat it into them. Metaphorically, not literally. She's also a natural protector. Sometimes that ties directly into her backstory and experiences, so it's nice to see it happening in real time. Halay is probably a walking red flag too. Like I said earlier, she's charismatic and often flirts with people, so she can be slightly manipulative. She's had several romantic partners before the story starts, which all end quite suddenly because after one fight or one comment, Halay will just leave without saying anything. To her, she finds it easier, but she's also stopping others from getting closure. Is it a red flag if she's aware that she's doing it? Probably. But she's too happy to drown than she is to actually try and get better. Despite this, Halay is still very devoted to her partners, and maybe we'll have some love stories coming her way soon. And this has been Halay's OC development journey. Halay has changed the most personality-wise, but visually stayed the same. I find myself doing that a lot when designing characters. If I'm happy with the way it looks, I just won't ever change it. Halay's weird little fringe is one of them. I hope you've enjoyed me rambling about my characters. Subscribe for more silly videos like this, and I shall see you in my next one.